I now call Judith Cochrane.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and can I apologise to the proposer of the motion for not being in the chamber when he proposed. I welcome the opportunity to speak today on this motion because it raises some very interesting and important points. Currently, those living in the social rented sector have next to no financial restrictions placed on the size of accommodation that they occupy, as the number of bedrooms they require doesn't affect the amount of housing benefit to which they're entitled. Those in receipt of housing benefit who live in the private rented sector have their claims assessed using the local housing allowance rules and receive housing benefit based on the reasonable accommodation needs of their household. The proposed changes seek to bring those of working age who are living in the social rented sector under the same rules as those who receive housing benefit and live in the private rented sector. As has already been discussed, the eligible rent will be reduced by a percentage rather than to a fixed level, as it reflects the additional rent associated with additional numbers of bedrooms. Inevitably, many tenants will find this very difficult, particularly if they have no other source of income in which to make up the difference, and so will be forced to move. But the fact is that there are not nearly enough one-bedroom properties in Northern Ireland to cope with demand, and so we need to be very conscious that this penalty is going to affect those who were allocated a two-bedroom property through no fault of their own. I do agree that the social housing stock needs to become more flexible in order that we can have an effective housing market. And with so many families in housing stress, we really do need to make better use of our resources. Currently, there is no review process for the allocation of social houses, and properties that may at one stage have housed a family with 3 or 4 children may now only house the parents as the children have grown up and moved elsewhere. And we're in a situation where numerous housing executive and association houses are left significantly under-occupied, with larger families remaining overcrowded in inadequate housing. However, unfortunately, I do not believe that this proposed under-occupancy penalty will address the full issue, as it will only apply to people of working age, and many of those under-occupied larger properties are allocated to those over 65. Whilst I agree with the idea that the introduction of size criteria will mean that claimants in the social rented sector will face similar choices to their counterparts in the private rented sector, I do not believe it is right to expect people to pay more because the UK Government suddenly says they have a spare bedroom, when they would quite willingly move to another property if one was available. We really must wake up to the issue that our most vulnerable will face when this legislation is introduced, and try to act now to soften the blow. Time is of the essence, and I would call on the Minister to analyse the current housing stock to see whether modifications can be made to alleviate the harsh effects of this penalty. We need to be creative and come up with innovative, cost-effective solutions that can be implemented as soon as possible. We should probably look to other cities and see what they can do to create more properties in a limited space. For example, creating an additional entrance on the side of end terrace properties could potentially create more one-bedroom flats. And I understand that the Department is currently carrying out some research with Glasgow University to try and fully assess the implications of this aspect of welfare reform. I think this is a step in the right direction, and I look forward to hearing in more detail what plans the Minister has to help to mitigate against the impact of this proposed penalty. Thank you, Mr.
I call